Good morning and welcome to Today in the News here on Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adeomi. I'll look into all our newspapers for today, starting with Vanguard. Major headline on Vanguard says 53,790 held in prisons without trial. Our 53,790 inmates languish in punitive cells for years without conviction. Two out of three inmates awaiting trial. Lagos, Ogun, Kano, Enugu prisons lead with 15,133. Bayelsa, Benue, Kogi behind with 1,363. Petty offences account for 85% of awaiting trial cases. Police, Justice Ministries, Judiciary share blame. Lagos AG, NHRC, RULAC, Prawa, PFN. Others react. Police mom. Major story can be found on page 14. Look at our top banner. It says MMIA fire. 14 trapped persons rescued. Building to undergo integrity check, says FAAN. Why money markets are not picking up in Southeast, says traders, as Soludo shuts Nnewi markets for 1 week. Wike cancels 485 Abuja land titles after failed verifications. El Rufai files 1 billion naira suit against ICPC others over invasion of residents. Foreign portfolio inflow grows 86.5% in January. A look at our lower banner on the Vanguard newspaper. It says Tinubu vows to establish state police to curb insecurity. 19 more Nigerians face deportation from US as list grows to 113. Away from the Vanguard, a look into the Punch newspaper. Major headline on the Punch says oil revenue roll. Presidency defends Tinubu as legal titans split over executive order. Petroleum Industry Act violates Nigerian constitution, says Presidency. NBA, OPS backed Tinubu as critics push against oil revenue reforms. Stands divided over president's directive. Tobana says alleged genocide. U.S. Congress panel submits Nigeria report to Trump convention. APC may settle for Iwada Bashir. Fresh loans, the federal government domestic debt jumps to 77 trillion naira. A look at the lower banner. It says Lagos International Airport Inferno grounds passengers, sparks travel chaos. Genco's dump presidency, 2.8 trillion naira debt deals. And lastly, FCT polls, ADC candidates obedience rejects result. Away from that, a look into the Nation newspaper. Major headline on the Nation says, state police can't wait. Tinubu tells governors. Top banner says a release of 7.2 trillion naira capital component of budget 2025 begins. Executive orders on oil gas remittance into federation accounts lawful. BRT fare to go up by 13%. Ondo government seals deep port $4 billion fertilizer plant deals. RFI sues ICPC for 1 billion naira. Away from that, a look into Guardian newspaper. Major headline on the Guardian says, election campaign spending to stress test CBN's naira inflation grip. Tobana says flights diverted. Lagos airspace temporarily shut over MMIA terminal Inferno. Executive order 9 enforces existing constitutional provision, says federal government. Amnesty demands end to killings, accountability as death toll rises. Futility of building $1 trillion GDP on hustle economy. 40% lack access to indigenous language education globally. And lastly, sit at home, Soludo shuts another market in Nnewi. That's all we have on the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Join us after the break for a quick analysis. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News here on Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Joining us today for a quick analysis is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. It's the publisher Ikajajari today, Lekki today, and Elupejo today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Lolade. Good morning to all our viewers.
Let's go straight into what we have for today.
Okay.
Our first story says, following the fire at the old terminal of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos yesterday, the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAAN, has disclosed that the 14 persons initially trapped were successfully rescued. But Lagos Fire Service, which took part in putting out the fire, said 12 air traffic control personnel were rescued alive. FAAN also said there were 6 casualties, including 3 males and 3 females, but they are all in stable conditions right now. While the one affected individual has been transferred to its hospital for further medical evaluation. Controller General Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, Margaret Adesheye, confirmed the fire and said there was no loss of life. Managing Director of FAAN also said, investigations into the cause of the fire has commenced, while civil and structural engineers will assess the integrity of the building. Although an eyewitness there said, the smoke started from the IT department and the server room of the facility. So let's go straight into the first question. What does, the fire incident at the MMIA, what does this say about, our emergency preparedness in Nigeria right now?
Well, fire can happen anywhere, really. Anywhere, anytime, anyhow, for a various number of reasons. But in yesterday's case, I would say the response wasn't bad. I mean, the fact that, first of all, there were no casualties, we are thankful for that. And the way, the video you saw of the fire, it wasn't a small thing. So the fact that there was no human life lost meant that, first of all, we were lucky and maybe we had some measure of preparedness. At least Lagos Fire Service was involved and they seem to have acquitted themselves admirably. So let's be thankful for that. But nonetheless, there are some preliminary preparedness steps that we can take individually, including fire extinguishers, things like sprinklers, early fire warnings, because fire service cannot be there immediately. So there are some residual steps that those who are around can immediately begin taking, not just going to go and look for buckets and filling buckets in the bathroom with water and trying to pour it to douse the fire. But there should be things like fire extinguishers. I mean, in my workplace, for example, we have a fire audit every year where the fire service comes in to come and check. They test your fire extinguishers, test your sprinklers. You should have emergency exits. There can't be only one exit where there are more than 10 people gathered in a place. You can't have, by law, you can't have more than one. You can't have just one exit in and out. There has to be fire exits so that if there's an emergency, there are alternative routes for people to get out. Then there's something called muster points. There must be muster points in each facility that show where do we gather when an emergency occurs, so that everybody's in one place. We are not now having to go and look for people who are lost inside. So muster places should be clearly identified where that's where everybody should make their way to in the event of an emergency. Then we all evacuate from the muster point. So there are all these steps that facility managers, this is even independent of the fire service, facility managers of places where a lot of people gather, facility managers have that responsibility. So a place like MMIA that is heavily trafficked, not just staff, but travelers, and then it's members of the public too. You can imagine, travelers who were there yesterday, both those there to receive those coming in, because I heard planes were diverted. I think British Airways, Emirates, and possibly one other one. Qatar, they were diverted to other airports so that means their loved ones who are there to welcome them were waiting. Then those passengers who are waiting to fly out were waiting for those planes to come in. So you can imagine the kind of human traffic that must have been in that place for this kind of thing to now happen. It's a very scary thing to know that, perhaps not all preventive steps or management steps were in place to either avoid that kind of thing happening, or if it happens, then how do we manage it to where the fallout is minimal? You say reports say it started in the server room. That lets me feel maybe it was a power surge, because server room is heavily dependent on electricity to power all of those their heavy servers and computers. So it may have been a power surge. So the question to ask is, did they have, voltage regulators, things that take the hit when the power surges, things that take the hit to protect your equipment, so that your equipment doesn't burn up and start a fire? Did they have the right voltage regulators in place? Then the electricity company, why is their power still surging in 21st century? Why can't they have, we are first of all complaining about uninterrupted power supply. But even the power that's coming, it's not steady. It's sometimes up, sometimes it's down, sometimes when they restore power after a power outage, the force with which the thing comes, you hear all your appliances go quick, and you know that the thing has come in too strong. Why in this day and age can the power company, the distribution company, not regulate their power to where it is uniform? Why does it have to fluctuate up and down? So these are the questions we need to interrogate.
Someone actually said that we're celebrating the rescue team, but that are we not supposed to be looking at the fact that all of this should have been prevented?
Yes.
What do you say about that?
Well, clearly prevention is better than cure, and it's always better to be proactive than reactive, so anticipate. But in this age we live in, you can't anticipate everything. Some things will happen that will catch you unawares. And like I said, fire is a natural phenomenon. It occurs in every part of the world, even very developed countries. It's difficult to prevent fire outbreak. So knowing that it's going to come, the next best thing to do is to have measures in place to mitigate it when and if it does happen. So the question is, what was the level of preparedness of both the fire service? Did they have water? Because I've seen situations where fire trucks come to a scene and they don't have water.
They don't have fuel. Yeah.
When I lived in America, what I saw them do was they have these things in the ground, right? That the fire service come and fire hydrants. They come and they connect their pipe to, and it is from there that they feed water. So their tanks don't necessarily carry water. What their trucks carry is fire retardant, right? That they can spray. That kind of thing that comes out of a fire extinguisher that they can spray. But when they need water proper, how much water can one tanker carry when you have a Murtala Mohammed airport burning? Even if they bring 10 tankers, the water can never be enough. So those fire hydrants are connected to the water supply at the water works. So they just attach their hose to it and start spraying the water. And there's an inexhaustible supply of water coming from there. So these are some of the things we are talking about. Next question we should ask is, how many of us in Nigeria get pipe-borne water from government water works? Most of us are getting water from our own sources, borehole, borewell, malams that are selling in jerry cans. We get water from secondary sources. In Lagos here, for example, the water works is almost practically moribund. They have about 3 or 4 water stations, water processing stations, but most of them are not supplying. I don't know of anybody right now in Lagos, any home or office that's getting pipe-borne water from government. I don't know any. That's not to say they are not there. There may be some in some places, but I am not aware. So government needs to buckle up a bit. Whatever the challenges are, the waterworks exist. In Governor Jakonde's time, between 1979 and 84, I believe he set up like 3 water processing plants, 3 or 4. And
yes, used to have like
and there are like 2 in Ikorodu. I think there's one that's called Adinyo or something like that. There are 3 or 4 that were set up during his time. And between them, they were able to supply the whole of Lagos. Of course, there's been a population explosion since then. But the government has not initiated any new waterworks in years. So it's just still 3 or 4 from the 70s that are supposed to be supplying a population that's times 10 of what it was in 1979. Can work. Do you understand? So government definitely needs to look at, I suppose because they believe that, they look at it and say, yeah, Kuku getting water somewhere, so it's not a priority anyway. But it is a priority because we can't continue to bore into the ground. Because what we are doing is, first of all, we are depleting the water table. Then secondly, by the time you are digging into the ground, going so deep, you are loosening the earth. You are loosening. So if 1,000 holes are all over the place, that terra firma, that firm ground that we're all sitting on, is loosening up a little bit. It's loosening. So the more bore wells we have, the less compact the ground underneath us is. So we're actually digging a hole for the future for ourselves, the more of this prospecting for water that we're doing by ourselves.
Okay, so it was reported that Terminal 1 of the MMIA has been under renovation for some time. Does this fire raise concerns about, the standards of maintenance and structural safety, in public facilities?
Well, if I remember clearly, the Minister of Aviation had said that Terminal 1, they were going to bring it down. When they opened Terminal 2, they said ultimately their goal was to shift every airline to Terminal 2. They were going to bring Terminal 1 down and rework it from the beginning in terms of apron, airline parking, check-in area. They were going to rework it completely. That the way that whole structure is doesn't quite work well for today's aviation requirements. So the long-term plan was to demolish and rebuild. So whether, because it was now running skeletal services, because a lot of the airlines have moved to the new Terminal 2, only just a few remain at Terminal 1. So whether because of that, attention has shifted and they were not paying much priority to the old terminal because it's on its way out. So maybe they reduced their oversight, maybe it became less of a priority. But the bottom line is there are still airlines operating there. The last time I traveled out of there. So there are still airlines operating, even if they are a handful, which means there are still passengers going through there and arriving through there, which means that it still has safety requirements that are as important as even the new terminal. But it's a very old airport. It was built, if I remember very well, I think it was built by General Yakubu Gowon, which means in the 70s. So that makes it 50-something plus years old. And it hasn't had any major upgrades since then. So things about fire safety, things about facility management, is very old building. So to have even kept it in that state that is not dilapidated today, I have to give FAAN credit that at least, even if it is unkempt and a bit shabby, at least it's still operational and it still serves its purpose. And it's like I say, the roof is not falling down. so I would say that there's something called occupational safety, right? There's an organization called OSHA, Occupational Safety and Hazard Agency, or something like that, that's in charge of establishing the standards for public places, especially where people gather. And the rules are more stringent. No smoking, anything that could create combustion. No smoking, no butane gas lighters, no cooking. You can't be having an open flame in a place where there are lots of people because anything can catch fire at any time. So there are commonplace, common sense fire safety rules that we should all abide by. But whether the regulators are enforcing them and whether us, the regulees, if there's any such word, whether those of us who are being regulated are abiding by the rules. You know that Nigerian penchant for cutting corners, for looking for shortcuts, for circumventing protocol and procedure, that will always affect us one way or another. When they say, do this, we don't do it. When they say, for your own safety, don't do this, we will do it. So at the end of the day, it will always affect us.
Okay, so this leads me to the next question. Who should be held accountable there?
We all have blame. We all have blame. Like I say, the fire started in server room. Was it the electricity company, power surge? They have blame for that. Was it FAAN itself that didn't put in voltage regulator because they already know that there will be power surge. So if you already know there's going to be power surge, what is your responsibility for preventing the power or for mitigating the power surge? You put in voltage regulator. Did they do that? The workers who are there, the fire service, the airport management. So all of us have small degrees of culpability, and everybody should look at the role that they played where they fell down or where they came up short in terms of what each of us was supposed to do. But when you see disasters like this, because it's a disaster, the only reason we are not lamenting it more is because there was no loss of life, but there was loss of property, there was damage to property, there was smoke inhalation and injury to innocent people. So it's a disaster any which way you look at it. And when a disaster like that occurs, the right thing to do is to do an investigation to find out what happened, why did it happen, and most important of all, how could it have been prevented so that in the future we don't have a recurrence of such.
Okay, so like you said earlier, you said there were flight diversions.
Yes.
Beyond these flight diversions, do you think there are like reputational damage that could have happened as a result of this?
No, I don't think so, because this can happen at anywhere. I'm sure other countries of the world experience this kind of thing as well. So I don't necessarily think that. Things happen, flights get diverted for any number of reasons, whether, maybe a runway light didn't come on. Any system that is mechanical in nature is susceptible to failure, Okay. So I don't think that the airlines that were affected by this will look at it and say, oh, that's Nigerian negligence. Because it can happen anywhere. I'm sure even in their own countries they to experience those kind of things. So there's no reputational damage. There would have been reputational damage if, for example, the fire wasn't extinguished, there was massive loss of life, if the place didn't have anywhere to divert to, if there were so many knock-on effects that were all negative. But this was contained. The fire happened, it was contained. The planes that were supposed to land couldn't land. They were properly diverted and they landed safely elsewhere. So, in other words, the worst didn't happen. The worst that could have happened didn't happen. It was averted. So there's no reputational damage. Aviation is a very delicate sector, and is subject to a lot of possible incidents. Various things can happen. So for that reason, they are more sensitive when things go wrong. They're more sensitive because there's a lot of lives at stake. So you look at it and you say, what are the safety implications of what happened here? Was any aircraft in danger at any time? You look at things like, suppose the pilots had calculated their fuel to be able to carry them only to Murtala Mohammed Airport, and they didn't have enough fuel to divert to go somewhere else, and they had to land by force in a place where there is a crisis. Thank God none of that happened. So there's always fail-safe backup measures for just in case situations. So they might have a little bit of extra fuel to be able to carry them to the next airport just in case. Airline, they always make, the aviation industry always makes allowances for just in case, because there's so much that can happen that individually we have little control over. So I'm glad that our backup systems all came together and worked as they were supposed to work to prevent loss of life and to prevent massive damage.
Okay, let's quickly look at our second story for today. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission are expressing concerns about a possible financial squeeze following an executive order by our president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that mandates that all oil and gas revenues be remitted directly to the Federation account without the previous deductions and retainment. The presidency has also defended, our president's executive order, saying that the Petroleum Industry Act violates and is not superior to the Nigerian Constitution. The special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, stated that criticism of the directive by the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria demonstrated a lack of understanding of the constitutional supremacy over ordinary legislation. Let's start with, why is this executive order generating so much anxiety amongst the oil and gas sector?
Well, first of all, because you've taken away their revenue stream, and now they have to go cap in hand to Aso Rock to get an allocation. In the past, what the PIA did was it reserved certain monies that they could withhold before remitting the balance. So there's something called a frontier fund that is used for exploration of oil in areas that are not likely to have oil. That's a cash cow for NNPC. Then there was a percentage of the profit from their oil prospecting that they were able to keep to fund their own operations. Look, for example, NNPC has its own hospital for its staff, so those kind of things were the kind of things, and I believe they pay their own salaries as well. But now that all those monies have, the president has said, pay into the Federation account, what now means is that NNPC now has to do a budget, justify the budget, submit it to the executive, and get approval. So basically, they are no longer independent or autonomous. They are now dependent on the executive to approve their budget. And of course, the executive can cut this off and say, no, this is too much, this is too much. So all of a sudden, they are looking at perhaps a massive cut in not just their revenue, but the freedom they had to spend money any which way, which I guess was the president's concern, was that at the time when the nation is struggling for revenue, we're borrowing money left and right, we can't pay our contractors, MDAs are not getting funded, why should NNPC and any other oil-related government entity be able to withhold a substantial part of the money that's coming through them? Pay everything into the government account, just like all the other agencies, all the other revenue-generating agencies. Pay it into the Federation account. Then we will now start giving you allocation according to your need. I guess the president looked at it and probably thought they are spending way beyond their need because they have the money. So let us curb their excesses at a time when the country needs money. However, there are some issues, which I'm sure you have questions relating to that. There are some issues, but that's the direct answer to your question, is that the reason there's such a ruckus is because it's taking away money from that accrued to the government side of the petroleum sector. and it's now vesting it in the executive and giving the executive the wherewithal to be able to determine what is appropriate to allocate to the NNPC and other parastatals of the government that are involved in the oil trade.
So would you say this is a step in the right direction from the presidency?
Well, I'm a bit worried because when I listened to Mr. Ononuga yesterday, and he said, well, nothing can be superior to the Constitution, and act of Parliament is subservient to. My question was, if the president passed the Petroleum Industry Act, signed it, so he's not turning around to say it was unconstitutional, but you signed it. So, the president signed the PIA, and we were hailing the PIA. It took 10 years to pass it in the National Assembly, and it was supposed to be the game changer for the whole industry. And the president signed it. At the time he signed it, he did not know it was unconstitutional. Right? He did not know it was unconstitutional. Although I don't think he signed it. I think maybe his predecessor signed it into law. But whoever signed it into law, bottom line is, they signed it, and it became law because of their signature. So to turn around now and say it's unconstitutional, the appropriate thing would have been to go challenge it in courts or go to the House of Assembly and get them to repeal it and pass it again. The president does not have a right to issue an executive order to override an act of Parliament. Even if the Constitution, even if you believe, first of all, if you believe that the Constitution, that the act of Parliament doesn't dovetail with constitutional requirements. Like I said, what you do is get National Assembly to repeal it and rewrite it. Remember the tax law now? When the tax law came out and there were complaints about it, they went back and they rewrote it. So even if you passed a law and it's signed and it's law, you can repeal it. But you don't do an end run around the law by signing an executive order. First of all, executive orders cannot override acts of Parliament because there is a separation of powers of government. It is the National Assembly's role to enact laws. The executive does not enact law. So even executive orders are not expected to rewrite laws. Executive orders are just a mechanism by which the president can quickly achieve some things administratively without having to go and get National Assembly to approve. But executive order is not supposed to rewrite any law because now all of a sudden the president now has legislative or law writing authority, which is not within his purview. That is for National Assembly. So I don't agree with what Mr. Ononuga said. And my view is that if they felt that the PIA or aspects of the PIA were unconstitutional, the right thing to have done was not to write an executive order to overcome the deficiencies in the PIA, but go and get it repealed or challenge the constitutionality of the PIA in court.
Okay, so does this in any way signal, a rift between the presidency and the National Assembly?
No, it doesn't necessarily signal a rift because it's not the National Assembly that's complaining. You don't hear any of them up in arms. It's civil society. Yeah. It's Pengasan. It's lawyers. Yesterday, I read an article in one of the dailies where 10 SANs were interviewed and asked about the legality of that executive. And all 10 of them, or maybe there were 9, all of them said it was wrong. Senior advocates of Nigeria, all 9 of them said the president does not have the authority to override an act of Parliament. So, National Assembly, they are pretty much the president's boys now. So, they are not in conflict with the president. Anything the president wants, they do. So I'm not sure that they are upset about it because it doesn't affect them one way or another. But those of us who recognize the fact that, look, you can't give overriding power to the executive. If the executive is already doing administration, you're not giving him legislative power as well. That's an autocracy. Next thing, we take over the judiciary and be making judicial pronouncements. And then we have a dictator. So civil society organizations are rightfully up in arms, human rights activists, civil rights activists, human rights activists, lawyers who want to defend our lawmaking capacity. Although I also read somewhere that the NBA supported it, Nigerian Bar Association. So there's always the thing about this thing we call law. It's an ass. When they say law is an ass, the same lawyer can argue both sides. Call him in, let him come and defend somebody. He can come out, go out of the room, come back and prosecute the same person under the same law. So law has so many loopholes, because I'm looking at 9 SANs saying it's wrong, and the NBA is saying, oh, we support the president's action. So lay people like me and you who didn't study law, we are confused. We don't know what is correct, because those that should give us guidance, they are talking from both sides of their mouth. SANs are saying it's wrong, NBA is saying it's right. What does common man like me and you that don't know law, what do we follow? What do we believe? What do we accept? So it's I don't know.
Okay, so just to round up, because our time is fast spent, who benefits more from this executive order?
The administration benefits, because they're looking for money everywhere. Look, in the last few weeks, some revelations have come that have been scary. Ministry of Health said they only got 38 million naira in 2025 for all their capital expenditure. Ministry of Interior said they got 0 naira. MDAs are crying about allocation. Minister of Finance, Mr. Edu, came in front of the Senate the other day. He couldn't defend why they haven't paid, or why they are not able to pay. He said, we need a closed door session so I can explain to you. What do they have to hide? Is it that there's no money? So if there's no money, where is the money? Subsidy savings. Nigeria Revenue Service, with the new tax law, money is flowing into their coffers. Customs every day is declaring billion from Tinkana. So where's the money? What's even worse is that we are borrowing too. We are borrowing more now. When President Tinubu came in 2023, our external debt was a certain amount. It has almost tripled today. So in addition to all those revenue sources, we are collecting borrowed money. So why are we not able to pay contractors? Why are we not able to meet
pay
our
workers,
pay health workers? Why? Where is the money? So to me, yes, the president is saying it that he did this move because he feels like the oil sector is being lavish and they are overspending. But I see it as a money grab. That is just to add more to the coffers of government to help them meet up to their responsibilities. So the question we should be asking now is, where did all the other money go? Where did the money go that you now need to go, and whether it's right or it's wrong in terms of what the PAIA recommended about withholding money, whether it's right or it's wrong. The fact that the president has taken back all the money, we need to ask that. It looks like you are in need of money. You are looking for it everywhere. So what happened to all the other money that makes you now desperate to go and be taking money that the PIA, an act of legislation signed by you and passed into law, that you now need to go and violate the tenets of the PIA to be able to bring more money into the government's coffers? That's the question we need to ask. Follow the money. Where is the money?
Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure always.
That was Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher Ikaja GRA today, Lekki today, and Ilupeju today. We draw the coaching on the show for today. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen. For up-to-date stories, check out our website. It's www.vanguardngr.com. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Until next time, do have a lovely day.